The only joke surrounding gamer subs is the savings you can get on a delicious order using my code Thorin, Thorin, at gamersubs.gg. If you do, be sure to add some free samples so you can try some other flavours. Maybe try their teas. Obviously, I'm going to be serving some tea right now about PGL, but they have a black tea, they have a yerba mate, they have a ginger and turmeric, they even have a sleepy time. I'm going to be putting PGL to sleep right now, tucking them into bed with a smacked potty. Obviously, the sleepy time one doesn't have caffeine in. It has L-theanine, which will help you go to sleep. It's one of the precursors to certain things in the brain that will allow you to feel sleepy. Check out gamersubs.gg, use the code Thorin for 10% off. Anything on their store applies to all the products they have, shakers, all sorts of other merch, t-shirts, etc. Now, PGL Copenhagen was obviously the first major in CS2. PGL had previously run a bunch of majors. They ran PGL Krakow in 2017. They ran PGL Stockholm after the online period in 2021. Then they ran PGL Antwerp in 2022. Then we had Blast Paris, obviously, was the last major, and IM Rios snuck in between there when ESL just got one despite their shenanigans, because obviously that year they sold to you-know-who in the Middle East. Now, PGL Copenhagen, in some senses, it had some very good games. It was really exciting on the Spirit Vitality side of the bracket, for example. In some senses, it was an amazing tournament. You know, except for all the issues that they had inside the server, outside the server, in the venue, with drama, with politics, with hires, with tech. Oh, wait, is that actually sort of making the skills go like this? It's not becoming that good. Look, we do watch majors for the games, so the games can always win in theory if they're good enough, and if they're exciting enough, and if the storylines like Na'Vi winning are there. That's why actually I've always felt bad for the Face It London major. Yeah, they fucked up in every regard, but then they also got the most boring playoffs ever with a bunch of shit results and some underdogs making it and they're doing nothing whatsoever. So let's get into some of the reasons why PGL is a joke. Not just the PGL Copenhagen major, PGL is a joke. Because PGL in general has become not just a joke, but a parody of exactly what they used to stand against and criticise and basically stand in opposition to. So my perspective on PGL, briefly, is this used to be one of the companies I fucked with heavily in esports. Because if you don't know, PGL, the company, and their founder are super OG. Like, they were running Counter-Strike and Quake tournaments in, like, the early 2000s, if you don't know. Yes, mainly more within their region, but you'd have some other teams and players and famous people that attended, etc. They were crucially, for me, when games like CS2 came along, a key alternative, independent operator to the ESL monopoly, or whatever you'd call that, where they had like mad control over the scene, and they seemed to be the ones who could bully everyone, and they were the despot and the tyrant, playing God with the calendar and purposely scheduling over the top of people, or going to war with people, or making people bend their knee like Blast. Crucially, when you had just ESL doing that, it was DreamHack, it was Face It, and it was PGL were the ones that stood against them. They were the Rebel Alliance. They were the resistance that was going to stop the evil ESL monopoly, and these arseholes like Ralph Reichart and those execs at ESL, Craig Torbell Levine, those bad guys, etc. But then the problem is ESL over the years started to buy up the properties. You remember their parent company, MTG. So they bought ESEA, they bought DreamHack. Suddenly DreamHack, one of the main ones who were like, we're gonna beat them, Thorin. Like, you're working with us, we're doing a cool different broadcast. Oh, what the hell? Now we're part of them. Oh, okay. ESEA. Oh, ESEA is different from Pro League. It's American. Oh, suddenly that's rolled into it. Oh, it's also ESL Pro League now. And then eventually the joke is even Face It. And Face It were the precursors to PGL in this sense. After DreamHack, Face It, obviously DreamHack got bought fairly soon on in CSGO by ESL's parent company. Face It got bought during the Saudi thing recently, where it became ESL Face It Group, right? When that happened, that was insane, because Face It in general were the ultimate people who were like, we're against ESL, like what they do is wrong, it's harmful to esports, they're greedy and selfish, and they're trying to make a monopoly. And Valve and the TOs have to speak here. And all of a sudden, these guys join, hey, what the hell? Now Ralph Reichart is my new best friend. And what the hell? I love ESL Face It Group now and the Saudi money. And famously, it was through some of those people that they were going to buy into my company, Last Free Nation. But when it turned out that the millions were coming from the Saudis, I had to turn that down. So this is actually a very sensitive topic to me. So if you go and you look, these guys, once upon a time, were one of those key ones like that. Like, right, they're not dickheads like ESL. They hire people in a way that's cool, unlike ESL. They allow more of an interesting broadcast without that stick up their arse and the fake American sports. Like, you're watching the NFL on Sunday style that ESL's always gone for, like bozos. There's a little bit of the German element there, let's be real. And crucially for me, you even look at some of the moves they made back then. They were pretty cool in early CSGO. Remember, on those early seasons of PGL CS in like 2014, 2015, 2015 rather, they brought Toby One in, the biggest daughter caster at the time, by the way. He was the guy who was doing all of the TI finals. They got him to come over to CS and do some CS with them in Romania. And who did they make his casting partner? Just a little bloke called Sadikist, who at the time was a little bloke. He'd just done like some Tribes casting and some ESEA casting, and then he did the Aspen MLGX Games event with me in early 2015, and then they brought him in to be the partner, even an interesting partnership there, with Toby One. By the way, those are two of the GOATs. I think Sadikist is the CSGO GOAT, and Toby One is probably, I mean, for some people, the daughter GOAT, isn't he? So having those guys in was a massive coup. And by the way, Sadikist then went on to become one of the greatest of all time. At the time, that was a massive risk to take. He was just some guy from NA. He wasn't a European caster. He didn't work with, obviously ESL used all their own people as well. Remember at those events that they had on fucking retainers like Pansy and fucking D-Man at that era. And they had, who else? Machine, etc. Those are the people that were there, that were working for their Jason Kaplan, all those people. So if you don't know, later, as well as working with Toby One, do you know who the other commentator that PGL brought in that worked with Sadikist? Just a little bloke called Henry G. So Henry G was working with them. That's another one of his gigs. That's, as far as I know, I think that's actually how that partnership formed, of Henry G and Sadikist, was working at PGL in Romania. By the way, that might be the GOAT duo for Counter-Strike. I'll always give a slight consideration to my boys, Anders and Semler, who I have a lot of affection for. But I think those two, Henry G and Sadikist, were the kings. When they were on their game at their peak, they were fucking unbelievable. PGL was one of the people who brought them together. Now, I fucked with them heavy, as I say, because I thought they were against ESL for legit reasons, like ethical reasons, professional reasons, even just the idea they're just being pricks to everyone. Turns out, as I'll address later, that actually they just wanted to be in the ESL spot, and they wanted to be the one bonking everyone on the head with a big iron fist. They wanted to be the despot that was oppressing everyone and fucking with all their enemies. It wasn't that they just didn't like the one, they didn't like being the one being oppressed. They weren't against oppression. They just wanted to be the one swinging the hammer. So I worked with these guys from 2015 through to 2021. Potentially, I would still be working with them if they hadn't fucked with me and then done all these things. Like, for example, one thing I thought was super cool was when they asked me to work the PGL Krakow Major, unsurprisingly, in Krakow, Poland in 2017. Well, because of that whole incident with the Katowice EMS1 Major in 2014 in ESL, I said, look, I'm not coming to an event in Poland, mate. I don't want to do it. Why would I just want some random idiot that doesn't know me out of context of that VOD and then just come and punch me in the face for no reason? That's going to be fun, isn't it? It doesn't matter if everyone else there's lovely or everyone else says, hey, we don't mind, or years ago, or you apologise, it's cool. Nah, I thought, fuck that, I'm not doing it. But they even told me, you know what, we still want you to be involved with the major somehow though. So what they did was, because I was doing the RMRs, which were in Romania, they arranged like that I actually came, I can't remember, I think it was like I came a few days, I don't think I came before the RMR. I think I came separately even. I can't remember what context, but I think I even flew out to Romania or came a few days early or something. And I basically went and did that series that they showed in the arena on the big screen. So I got to be at PGL Krakow just on screen. If you remember, it was called The Chronicles of Thorin, where I told like a little 5 to 10 minute historical video profile for each of the teams there, the big teams that were there. It was quite an interesting concept. They even did it, by the way, where when they revealed it, they had this thing like, I bet you didn't think you'd see me at the major. And it was like, and then I sort of like appeared like fucking Palpatine who suddenly returned or something, except actually a cool version of Star Wars, obviously not that shite. So I used to think, you know what, they've got a load of scuffed areas, but then again, the region of the world they're coming from, they're paying people very little, they're trying to use their own people, they're not trying to just get like gouged by the biggest operators in the industry. Also, they're like a company that always, I thought maybe they have like a family vibe there or something. They've all worked there for years and years and years and years. It all seemed pretty cool. I thought, you know what, you can look past a lot of that as long as, you know, the games are good and as long as they stand for what's right. When someone stands for what's right, you can forgive a lot of the like harmless or more minor details. When someone's a prick and a dickhead and they're oppressing people, suddenly you want everyone to know all the fucked up things they've done. A few of the details. As far as I know, they do something like, I think the PGL guy runs like the daughter store within Eastern Europe or something, so they get like bazillions off the digital goods, I think. They've obviously white labeled a ton of daughter events. They've done their own daughter events like majors and stuff, but they've also white labeled them in both CS and daughter. They've obviously done a lot of events that Perfect World is listed as the TO, but actually sometimes it's PGL doing the production, etc. Now, I have vouched for them and Silvio, their founder, over and over and over and over and over again, many times publicly and privately. I thought he was just an old school guy in every sense, by the way, man of honor, like honest guy up front. all that jazz. By the way, he was always one of the easiest people to deal with financially. You'd just say a number. He wouldn't go back and forth haggling. He'd just sort of be like, yep, that's cool. You can get that. Or yeah, okay, we're men. We'll accept that. Or I've even heard, I won't say who, that there was even some TO, some talent rather, that he would just say, like, just send me an invoice. And they would just say whatever amount they wanted. Look, they wouldn't go crazy. They themselves were trying to be men and do it in an honourable manner. They would just ask for an amount and he would just pay them that. He wouldn't have a big haggle, etc. I thought that was cool as fuck. Like, this isn't like ESL. If you don't know, ESL, even with their best talents until they give them the long-term contracts recently, would still be doing stuff like a week or two before the event, coming in and trying to just get like €100 off their day rate for each day with like their best people. And then they're bragging about how much money they've raised and how huge they are, the viewership. And then they're nickel and diamond people. I've always said, I used to get paid more for Gfinity than I ever did for ESL. Enough said, right? Because that's the point. ESL thought because you want to do the event, they can fuck with you. Gfinity's thing is, do you want to do the event? Right, well, I better pay you well then. I better pay you the top rate if I want the top talents. So they were also within that world. But I will get to later on at the end of the video why that's no longer the case. And I'm now probably going to be one of the biggest critics of PGL, including from this video onwards. So we'll start with the PGL Copenhagen Major. Let's just start with the production issues. Because first and foremost, even though all PGL events I've ever worked have had some scuffed elements, by the way, Counter-Strike in general has a lot of scuffed elements, actually typically only ESL and sometimes Blast, who are kind of smooth and don't tend to have any tech problems. They also put a lot of money and a lot of extra staff into those issues, as far as I know. But if people don't know, once upon a time, PGL actually had production components that were fabulous. Now look, they've had really bad ones. Like, wasn't it the case that I think it was claimed by ESL that when they did Cologne and they had a few tech problems in like the playoffs of Cologne 2016, I think they claimed that they'd like worked with PGL on that. I think PGL worked with DreamHack for Exclusion Poker, which had some issues. So there are times there were some issues, but actually they did innovate things. Like if people don't know, they did a whole bunch of, I can't remember if it was like augmented reality things or they had a whole bunch of things with like multiple observers and how they did replays. Basically, ESL used to just come and just hire those people to come work with them. Just like ESL recently hired the best guy from Blast, the main guy from there, the Nicholas guy, to come over. They just go and they just brain drain and headhunt the best people. So actually, a bunch of the best people who were called Vlad or whatever, everyone fucker there is called Vlad for some reason, they were all getting signed up by ESL. So that's why they were losing the top people and their innovations. They couldn't build upon them. They couldn't compound upon them. They just got an innovation and they took the step down again. And then suddenly ESL and their rivals got better. So you would hope production would be one area for a major. That would be really good, especially because in this case, it's like, in terms of PGL majors, this is your fourth major. And if you add in some of the ones you might have worked at in the past, it might actually be like your fifth or sixth major at that point in time. So let's consider from the RMR to the major, some of the production issues. Right, first of all, anyone who watched the major will know this. The stream just straight up went down a bunch of times. In big like playoff games and stuff. It was mental. Like, people were literally, like I was seeing like people like Maui Snake when they were doing core streams, they would have to go. And what happened is on Twitch, the main website we're all using to watch this major, the official broadcast would just go down completely while the game and the stream was still live. And what would happen is people were bringing up on their core stream, like a YouTube stream or a Kick stream, or even foreign language streams on Twitch that were using that as the source, like Isaac Guy from Poland. There's all sorts of people out there. Because PGL's own stream was the one going down. Now, they're going to, I assume, claim something like, we're DDoS. Okay, but all I'm saying, mate, is that doesn't happen to other people's majors. Have you noticed that? That's another thing, which when I add it all up, goes against you. Then how about this? I actually thought they were terrible at this major with missed replays. They just kept missing. The one thing you rely upon in the modern day, ESL and Mega, is at least in a break, if not like during the flow of the game, you're going to show me those key kills in a 1v2 that I didn't see from their POV that were massive, right? They were just missing the replays all over the place at this major. The audio, there's a reason people say, I mean, they used to say Starladder audio guy. A lot of people say PGL audio guy now, don't they? Because fucking hell was that audio notoriously shitty at this major. I've always found there to be problems. I'll get into it later, but even at Stockholm, there were terrible problems with audio. There were segments where it came in and Richard Lewis looked like he was a fucking ventriloquist. No sounds coming out of literally like one of those famous hosts in Counter-Strike, just talking on your world championship. He's just on camera, bro, and there's just no sound coming out. Or even better, how about when it would come in and then they would be talking, or they'd be talking over the game and it'd be insane static. And I'm not just talking like, while you're just, well, yes, you know, we're coming like, off the curve. No, it would be like, it sounded so mangled and static and fucked up. It was insane how bad the audio problems were. That was really embarrassing. Like, while people were talking on desk segments, while people were trying to like listen to each other. Then how about this? At the RMRs, after the round, there would sometimes just be no audio. Does anyone else remember that? It would just be silence. After the round, just be complete silence. Like, Like, are we in a fucking monastery or something? What is this shit? By the way, the show match was complete dog shit at this major, like offensively bad how shit it was. Oh, and then shall I just throw this little detail in there? There was like tech pauses seemingly after every fucking pistol round, it felt like. They'd do the pistol round, there'd be a tech pause immediately, we'd just be waiting, like immediately taken back out the game again, waiting for some technical issue to be resolved so we can start the game again. Now look, people are going to say, well, it's early CS2. All I'm going to say is, other events had the odd problem. You'd have a crash that would affect, like Chengdu, Device, Astralis against FaZe. You'd have a crash here or there. ESL had the odd one, but they would have the odd one. This was like every problem all at once. And now let's get into where it gets spicy as fuck. Because when I talk about crashes or pauses, there was a massive pause/crash at this tournament, which I could do a whole video about. Well, let's do this segment now because it's going to lead to an area where they already show that they're corrupt at PGL, which is, first of all, throughout the group stage, there was a bunch of times it crashed. It's just those weren't so high profile and so well sort of put out in the community that if you didn't watch the game, you wouldn't be aware of it. But obviously everyone was aware of that really key Swiss game between Virtus.pro and G2, where basically VP would have been on series point to win 2-0 against G2 on Inferno. On T side, they would have been up, I think 12-10, I think it would have been at that point in time. And G2 would have had like semi-sus money, or if they'd have saved in this round instead of going for it and winning it, they would actually have maybe had like guns, but a slightly dodgier buy or less utility on CT side Inferno, or key map, by the way, for having utility to trade and to be able to keep the T's back out the banana early on. So what happened famously was, there was that round where VP got into the B site and they had mega post-plant position. Jame was even actually at the back, by the way, like the new boxes or whatever it's called. And he was in position with his AWP, and then his PC crashed, and even worse than just crashing, it made his model just like walk out into the open and just get killed by, I forget if it was Huxley, just easily, just killed right out in the open. Now, supposedly, the call goes that Huxley had said to them, like, oh, we'll just do a rotation if we can't, like, we'll save basically if we can't get a kill early. And then I've heard later from others that actually even knew that the crash had happened, and someone even said, or something like, hey, the crash does something, or whatever. So then G2 did a retake and went for it with, like, I think scoffed weapons or something, or they were going to be on scoffed weapons if they lost. They went for it, and because of this free kill, they actually managed to win that round, and then they won out the game. And then they got to the third map, they won the third map, and then easily, I think, from what I remember, because I imagine VP was probably mentally broken. And then that put G2 into the playoffs. So if that doesn't happen, that might, look, there'd still be around to play, but that might have been VP in the playoffs, which changes everything, by the way. And then imagine how many people's careers or fates changed because of that one result. Like, that's Virtus.pro's changes. They didn't make top 8 at that major. G2's might have changed. They might not have made top 8. Maybe Huxley gets fired then. And Mouse are the ones who had to play G2, who were more experienced. Then there was the stage invasion, and then G2 won easily. Maybe if that's VP against Mouse or some similar matchup, maybe a totally different thing happens, even if there is the stage invasion. Maybe if the Mouse wins anyway, because they're the better squad with the better map pool, and the experience would actually be not even too incomparable. G2 has people like Nico, for fuck's sake, mega experienced guy. So the problem I have is this. It wasn't just the VP G2 crash, because look, on some level, yes, there were crashes happening anyway at that point in time. They were happening in other tournaments. It was clearly a CS issue, but some people were saying it's an NVIDIA issue. Is it actually CS2 the game issue? Is it the tournament organised issue? People claim it was NVIDIA related. That's what actually PGL themselves said on Twitter most famously. But my issue is they actually attempted to cover up that crash. That's what's so suspicious. If it's just a crash that isn't your fault, just let it stand. It's not your fault. We can't blame you for that. But they actually tried to memory hole that crash taking place in that game, guys. I'm for real. At the time, someone tipped me off to this, and I went and looked. And if you watched the VOD immediately afterwards, I think they've put it back in now, I'm not sure. They just actually took that round out. You'd get to that round late in the game, like whatever it was, like 11-10 or something like that, or 10-10 or whatever. I think it was 11-10 or something. You get to that round, and it would just like have them like going towards the B site. Then it would just cut. That whole section where they went into the site was cut from what I remember. And then it just suddenly sort of like teleported to like a different location. I think it was on like the jungle side of A where like the last kill took place or something, where maybe like someone was lurking or something. I can't remember exactly how it happened at that point. Or maybe they just cut to the next round where someone was there. They just cut to that round. So that whole thing that happened with the crash was just deleted completely from the VOD on YouTube, the literal real VOD. And then the game ended and G2 won that map. And so what happened was, I went out there and I told people about this. So I'm going to show you here. I said, PGL has edited the Jame crash out of the official VOD on their YouTube channel. It just skips the round until there is one VP player left. So then when he dies, you just look at, oh, that's why they lost the round. But you missed the whole round. I put, this is beyond a fucking joke. I tagged Valve Software just for the memes. Like, obviously, Valve doesn't give a shit what anyone says on Twitter. And then I put, here's where the problem happened though. Because since the Silvio guy, the PGL founder, CEO guys who I tagged, well, because I thought he was I thought he was a real man. I just decided, fuck it. You want to fucking ignore me, as you'll find out later? I'll go at your head, mate. So I said, do you have no shame, Silvio? Are you not a man? Like, at the end of the day, it's not your fault what your underlings do, assume you didn't tell them to do it, but it is your responsibility. You are the one at the end who's going to get the credit for the event being awesome, PGL being a great company. So you have to also take the slings and arrows when you fuck up, mate. So I did that. Now, do you think they just admitted? You're going to find out later, nobody in Eastern Europe will ever fucking apologise. So no, they doubled down, as you'd imagine. So then I linked here to the VOD, and then I even tagged Counter-Strike, because obviously Counter-Strike would be a better tag than Valve Software, wouldn't it? Now let's get into how silly this gets. So what do you think their response was when I pointed it out? Do you think they just went, oh, sorry, our bad, we fucked up, or here's what happened? No, it's better than that. What they did here was they replied to me on Twitter. They put, hello, Thorin. Thank you for the flag. Already just fraudulent as fuck, but get ready. We are using automated software to upload VODs. Now, they're going to imply that they're using like AI that does it for them, basically. So get ready with this one. We're using automated software to upload VODs. So as a result, the logic would be they didn't cut it out. And due to an unforeseen error, a portion of the second map, VP versus G2, was not uploaded in its entirety. Right. So there was a weird error with this automated, potentially AI system, where somehow the automation/AI knows not to even just cut out the moment of the pause, to cut out all the bit before that would set up and look really bad when the crash happened. Magically, that's all it cuts out. It's just the one thing you wouldn't want to show if you were a TO who might have been partially to blame, who were trying to memory hole what happened. Interesting. So they're already clearly lying. I would allege and speculate they are lying to me right now. They go, apologies for the oversight. They never were going to address this, by the way. I'm the one who exposed this to the world. There was no intention to omit any part of the game. I don't believe that. As you can see in the highlight reel we posted 2 days earlier, that includes James' game crash. Right. If you've already included it in a highlight, how does that prove that you then deleting it from the official VOD on YouTube isn't intentional? Oh, wait, because you didn't do that. That was an unforeseen error that happened by an automated service. Maybe that damn bloody Data from Star Trek, that AI robot did it. Tell you what, they were right about bloody Skynet. It's memory holding shit from VODs and everything. Then they go, this is the worst part of all. This is what shit eaters these guys are. They then have the audacity to actually say at the end, for any future flags, as in like if I have a problem with something they've done publicly at their massive event, what should I do? Should I again just do? They've just thanked me for it now. So since they're thanking me, should I just keep doing it publicly and saying, hey, you fucked up in this way, fix it? They go, for any future flags, we recommend you contact us directly. Our DMs are always open. Right, so let's just run through this a second. They're actually just basically saying at the end there, basically, could you just DM us privately so we can choose whether or not to take action? And if we do, just do it all surreptitiously, privately, out of the public eye, so then the public doesn't know what we're doing and what you're implying we're doing, Thorin. That'd really help. Thank you. Hey, I'm the guy from Office Space, the boss. Could you just privately reach out to me so I can memory hole it privately or secretly restore the VOD? And then no one has to know that I sort of did anything fucked up. Thanks. No, actually, how about go and check notes? Fuck yourself. Up your ass. All right, cool. I don't have any reason to do that at all, do I? I mean, as I get into later, why the fuck would I be on your side after how you treated me, you bitch? So, no, I don't think that's cool. And that actually implies quite a sinister aspect to me, that they're not actually owning to it. They're making it sound like they are with all that first part, but then I think they've lied. I think they've been disingenuous and dishonest with how they've explained themselves. I think they've used a nonsense explanation, which I'll show you in a second. And then at the end, they've sort of just said, look, we'd rather actually not have any kind of problems in public, so just do it privately. Kind of nonsense, isn't it? Oh yeah, by the way, here's one reason I also don't believe that's legitimate, like they were thanking me for the flag. Because if so, why make that just as a reply to my tweet? Why not just make your own post about it? Maybe quote tweet me or just address the topic. Like, hey, we didn't mean to delete this, guys. We're restoring the VOD. We apologise to Jim and anyone might think so. That was definitely not our intention. Like, I went back and I looked on that day. What did they post on Twitter that day? So as I'll show you there, look at the date. That was the 26th of March. So on the 26th of March, these are the only posts that they put publicly on their Twitter account. One down there just says there's 2 days left for the major in CS. And then the other one's about a Dota competition. PGL Wallachia. I believe that's Dota. It's the one that Richard's doing now, if you don't know, for them, as the host. But it gets better than that. Because as I alluded to, when they said that thing about like, oh, it was like an automated system, like unforeseen error that got it all out. Here's what they actually tried to claim happened here, boys. Because here's the problem with their claim, okay, is this post here. This post, kind of a bitch, this one, if you were trying to be full of shit. This guy replies to them, and he says, you literally said AI doesn't do the job, as in there isn't an automated system. Stick with one story. In C9 versus Spirit highlights, you imply that your employees are doing it when you were called out for cutting important rounds. Oh, wait, they've been cutting other important rounds, and they just actually implied it was their own manual employees doing it. Okay. You even deleted this comment from that vid. And he then has a comment there. Someone said, whoever is editing these highlights, if you read this, please stop cutting key rounds. C9 win CT pistol and you cut round 14 where Spirit wins the force by a crucial swing round in the context of the game. And then this guy goes, AI does the job actually. Then in comes PGL, who I believe are the ones who are using this account here. It was like a highlight channel for the major or whatever. It says there CS on the little icon next to the name. It says, hey, same style. Thanks a lot for the feedback. We've discussed that internally. Sometimes people are just people and cannot follow everything. Pause. They're implying employees manually edit and upload these VODs. That's what that sentence says. Because if it was actually an automated system or a robot or AI, you'd say, hey, you know what? There's bugs in the AI system or the automated thing. You didn't say anything about automated on this one. You just go, hey, people are people and they make mistakes. That's what they mean there. What they actually mean is someone didn't follow everything in the game and made a mistake and thought that round wasn't important. They go, get ready. Guys had a really hard day, and they don't only do highlights, but also the stats of the map, the pick of the team, etc. Wait a minute. Humans had a hard day, and that's why they've made this error. And they don't only do highlights. No, they should only be doing highlights, bro. That's what you've implied. You've implied highlights are done by you. VODs are all uploaded automated. So which is it? I know these are highlights that we're talking about now, but even so, like, they don't only do highlights. What else do they do, Matthew? Do they do the real VOD as well? By the way, the thing about liars that always catches them out isn't necessarily that you can prove they lied. It's that they don't keep track of their lies, and later on their own words will accidentally slip up and show that they were lying early on, as they've done here, I would suspect. Then he goes, get ready. In all the cases, we discussed that internally, and we will try to do our best so cutting the force won't happen again. For the people who says that AI does the job, an automated system, get ready. This is not true. Please don't blame guys ever again. Or they also have the audacity to get mad at you for blaming them. Our highlights in 90% are better than Matt's and faster than Vladipard. So now they're also just taking credit for being better than someone who's a third-party person who does highlights, even though we're just talking like you're actually fucking up your highlights. So think about that part again. For everyone who says AI does the job, this is not true. By the way, do you know how you know it's not true anyway? You could obviously have a system that just takes your Twitch VOD, can tell with a little basic AI thing where the game ends, takes that VOD, converts it into a video and uploads it to YouTube channel. That would be quite a clever thing to have in your workflow, right? The downside is this. Why, like on the Twitch VOD, obviously that wasn't deleted that round that VP crashed, was it? So why would the AI thing just take out the crash? And why would it only take out the part that isn't before the key last kill you need to see that shows that G2 wins the round, then skips to the next round? It's all just too suspicious and convenient, isn't it? And even worse, it's not that I've just speculated all of this. I've sort of got you with your own words full of shit here, haven't I? I've shown that you're just talking absolute fucking bollocks. Classic talking bollocks, innit? Then there was the whole thing. This will be relevant with G2 as well, where G2 played against Mouse in the quarterfinals, and quite literally people began rushing one by one and then en masse the stage. Now, yes, it was because of some dickhead other skin site out there that was mad at like the sponsor of G2, who's like a skin like whatever, like fucking gambling site or something like that. And they were trying to make some weird protest against. It was basically like when those like Just Stop Oil dickheads go and like try and fuck with like artworks and go, hey, we're doing it because we're trying to save the world and it's evil. It's the only way to get your attention. They were deciding they would just disrupt the major with that. And people were putting like bounties out there. Like if you rush the stage, you'll get this much. And so it wasn't just one person did it or one or two. There was a whole bunch of people. And apparently people were even trying to who got stopped from rushing up after that. Now, first of all, I have a massive security concern with that immediately. That's already something that makes me so nervous, because what if that wasn't just an activist in esports or someone who cared about skin sites? What if that was, I don't know, an actual terrorist who wanted to do an attack on a massive stream with millions watching, or just some lunatic activist who's willing to kill someone or injure them? What about that? What if, by the way, remember, some of the people, it was G2 who was being protested against, right? G2 has a Russian player. What if some lunatic wanted to harm Monacy, a Russian player? So, by the way, do you want to know another aspect? How about exertionists from Israel? What if some lunatic activist thought, well, on stream, I'll attack one of those people on a stream watched by millions because of what I think about their country or the politics of their country or some other act that's happened? Now, admittedly, this is before all the stuff that happened between Israel and Palestine, of course. That would be a nightmare, because what the fuck does it have to do with that player? That's disgraceful. That shouldn't even have to be a consideration for that player when he attends events. That's outrageous. So I've already been so nervous about that topic all the time. And just because that didn't happen doesn't mean you can go, well, but it wasn't that, Thorin. You don't know that. You only found out later that that's why people were rushing the stage, why they were attacking. And also, if some kids being told, I'll pay you if you run on stage and disrupt the major, can get on stage and start doing that, so the players have to be evacuated, then what would happen if actual political terrorists wanted to do something, or lunatic activists who are maybe even willing to die, get onto that fucking stage with or without a weapon, and then what are you going to do as a pro player or an admin or some bloke just trying to fucking tackle them? Even worse, it was implied that they'd already gotten word earlier that someone might try something silly like this. So you had word earlier, and these people still got onto the stage. They still got up there, bro. That is, I think they even fucking touched the trophy and knocked it over. That is fucking, admittedly, when they were being tackled, I think. That is insane. Again, what would happen if that was someone who wanted to kill or injure you? That's the worst part about this. Is that, yeah, but nothing did happen, and it's their fault, and we're going to look at legal action. No. At a massive event like that, you should have like barriers stopping the crowd getting to the stage. You should have like 20 security guards, in my opinion. You've got a giant crowd of tens of thousands of people. You can't control them with like 4 security guys. I don't care how tough this guy was as a bouncer. He's not going to kick in 15 people like John Wick, is he? That's unreasonable to expect. Now, this is a bigger issue than PGL. I'll probably do a video about this one day. I do think this has been an issue for a long time, and eventually someone will get injured or killed because of this lack of security. I've told the story before. I once worked at an event where it was ESL New York, where they just allowed crowd to actually come along, and when we had the analyst desk in like one of those like areas that come out down to the steps that go down to your seats, we were right in that area, as they often do in American sports broadcasts, and they were literally letting crowd people just run behind me and Yanko across the back of our analyst desk through to the other side to go, lol, and go past the camera, and everyone thought it was funny. And I said to the ESL guy, you will literally provide security or I won't go on camera again, because that person has access to my back as they do that, but I am being paid and told I have to keep watching that camera with the light on. I can't even look around and defend myself. So if that person wants to kill me, they just come up behind me with a knife and shank me, I'm dead. Now, you again might go, but that wouldn't happen. You don't know that. And if it ever does happen, it's too late at that point, and your words would mean nothing. I want to be alive. I want everyone in esports just be able to do a fucking tournament, a video game tournament, and not have to be worried about that. Now, ESL, you can imagine, immediately put security guards at the end of that row so they couldn't get in and do that. And only maybe kids a few rows back could reach up and put a sign up. So that was somewhat resolved. But the idea something has to go wrong before you start trying to fix that after the fact is a nightmare, isn't it? So then I'll just throw this out there. Yeah, it wasn't just PGL's fault. But you look at what it took to stop more invasions. Do you remember people like Pekka from G2, the general manager of G2, and other community people like streamers were for real having to help like tackle these fucking fans before they could get to the stage? That is insane. Not only is it not their job, they're not security people, and you're also opening them up, by the way, potentially to a giant lawsuit. What if it's like in America, right? Think about what they're like in certain countries. What if you did this in America and someone like Pekka tries to be a hero because he comes from Serbia and he tackles some kid to the ground? In America, that kid then goes like, oh, my arm's injured forever, I'll never work again, and also the emotional trauma of being attacked physically by someone who doesn't even have a right to do that. He wasn't security, he just attacked me for no reason. That's like a lawsuit, and then Pekka pays millions of dollars or go to prison or something. Like, this is like the world we live in. Why are they even doing that? Nobody should be involved except security in that sense. The idea the crowd is going to police itself. Are you out of your mind? Are the lunatics running the fucking asylum? So I don't put that whole stage invasion on them, but I will say it was another fuck up. It's another issue with thinking you can min-max on security, etc. And it's definitely an issue for how it affected the event. If you don't know, I've now done interviews with players. They've told me, people like Brawl and Exertion, others behind the scenes, I've talked to loads of them. They just straight up told me that when that invasion happened, they had no info. And even worse, they didn't know, is that a terrorist? Is that someone coming to kill me, literally? So as a result, it's not just Mouse, I've heard other people too, but some of them I've been told literally feared for their safety or their life. Like, some of them thought, is that a guy with a knife or something? What the fuck's going on? What? Because they were just having people come in their booth and basically tell them sort of like, we're going to get off stage now. Someone's invading the stage. Like, as though like it was like a bomb was coming or something. And people were just running out there like, what the fuck? Going backstage, oh yeah, and then after you've gone through all that, and finally you let it subside, like half an hour, 45 minutes later, you then make them go back up and they have to play a fucking Counter-Strike game in front of the whole world. And then now shit the bed completely. Yeah, we know they've choked before. Never as bad as that. They look like a shadow of themselves. They looked like they'd seen their own ghost that was about to be murdered by a potential activist. They looked like they ruined that entire fucking game. Well, I'll tell you what. If you've seen how Mouse plays against Na'Vi, I'd like to see that Mouse-Na'Vi semi-final. I think Mouse was better than Na'Vi at that time. I think Mouse would have beaten Na'Vi at that time. So I want to see the game for real. If they could actually have beaten G2, I think they beat Na'Vi, they go to the final. By the way, look, they always lost to FaZe, so maybe they lose to FaZe, who knows? Maybe they fluke it. That was the fluke major for Na'Vi. Na'Vi wasn't that sick at that one. I think it was plausible they could have beaten them. So that alone was mad. Then how about this? This is where I'm going to start really... This is all public stuff I've shown you so far. Now I'm going to start spilling the tea. Now we're going to get some behind-the-scenes info about PGL. So I'm now going to go on to a topic that's about their behaviour surrounding who got to attend the major and how they attended the major. So here's the first one. I have heard that at this major, they wouldn't allow like ESL executives to attend the major. Now you might think, well, no problem there, Thorin, that's their rival. Why would they let their rival in? Because the actual precedent, the standard in the esports industry in Counter-Strike is that when you have a major, it's treated as if you're like white labeling it, although not white labeling because you're putting your name on it in this case and paying for it, but it's treated as though you're hosting it on behalf of Valve. Remember, it's not like TI where they sometimes had more say in what happened. You're doing it on behalf of them. And so as a result, you accept that there's an ecosystem within Counter-Strike and you allow your rivals, could be ESL, Blast, DreamHack, FaZe, depending on what era we're talking, PGL themselves, you allow them to attend the event if they want to. Often you comp them tickets in a box and there's a place to go, etc. Or have like a lounge where there's all industry people there. It's quite standard. And you generally just allow the same people to be there because the major's the major. It's the World Championship. It is our TI. You don't exclude them because you got the major this time and they're your enemy. That's not standard at all. When I went to majors, I saw with my own eyes ESL people, DreamHack people, Blast people, all different ones at StarLadder, at DreamHack, at ESL, but all of them, all across the board. But I've heard, not only did they deny ESL execs just in a petty fashion because they could, I've even heard, like, if anyone like that who was an ESL employee wore, like, an ESL t-shirt, they would talk, hey, what are you doing? What's that? And that could potentially get you denied entry. Now, here's where it gets better. I said at the beginning, this is what they were against. This sort of dickhead, despotic behaviour where you're a tyrant who rules with an iron fist, getting whatever you want, is exactly what PGL was against. Except it turns out I'm wrong. They weren't against that. They were just against ESL getting to do that. They were against Ralph Reichardt getting to be the God Emperor. If Sylview's the God Emperor, that's just cool. If PGL are the ones doing that, that's just cool. Weird how that works, isn't it? So much for you being the resistance, right? Just like DreamHack. And then face it as well. Because everyone at some level sells out. They sold out literally to that company and joined them. They couldn't beat them, so they joined them. You sold out your integrity just because you got a chance to bash your enemy in. Kind of fucking whack. Don't know about you, but I won't violate my principles to fuck my enemy. I can fuck my enemy with the truth and legit principles because I'm actually a chivalrous man. By the way, the reference I always give to that kind of behaviour, where you stand against something and you battle against something, then when you get into position, you take over. If anyone's an old school gamer, it's the game Diablo, isn't it? Remember in Diablo 1, you battle through the game to beat the devil and kill him, and then what happens in Diablo 2? Your character that you played, that won at the end of Diablo 1, is one of like the evil bosses in Diablo 2. Look it up, it's the law of the game. They became like that. I've always said Carmack became like that in terms of I was a journalist speaking out against TOs. Then he joined the TO and became the corrupt guy, literally denying people press access and the press real information and shutting down all sorts of shit. Same exact sort of bullshit behaviour. Then how about this? The other reason why you're not the resistance is when you got your chance to not be a dick like ESL. Remember when ESL would do stuff like they wouldn't hire certain other people, either because of petty politics and beefs, or things like, well, you're mainly like a rival person for Blast or for someone else or for Flashpoint or whatever, so we're not going to hire you, right? PGL also was supposed to be outside of that bullshit and just hire the right people that are cool. That's why they actually hired a lot of old school people, remember? Sometimes they would hire like Natu instead of one of the more modern people like Yanko or someone like that. So you look, and when it came to hiring for this major, they just intentionally skipped all the people with ties to ESL, or so it was perceived. So Yanko is an ESL guy in terms of doing most of the events. They skipped him. The idea you can skip Yanko as an analyst for a major is fucking absurd. If you're hiring more than 2 analysts, Yanko has to be hired. He is that great at the game, at analysis, and historically, and he has all the experience. Freya, one of the best hosts. She can even do interviews, sideline reporting. She's a true fan of the game. She's never done anything to PGL. She wasn't hired. I've heard this is the reason why. Maui Snake wasn't hired. Now, it's bizarre because he doesn't always get the ESL gigs, but it was sort of implied at the time, whatever reason, they thought he was a guy that had done some shit, like, oh, he's an ESL guy. So they didn't hire any of these people. They just went with their own hires instead. By the way, this whole topic of how they became the ESLs of the world is why you'll have seen a thing a few days ago that I don't believe at all, which is PGL, the guy who was the CEO, came out, are you ready? He said, we understand that our events are unique and watched by millions of fans worldwide. We cannot and don't want to be associated with an event that has lost its credibility and is not serving its purpose anymore. So I ask you kindly to remove our company and our events from all your so-called categories. Well, they are categories, aren't they, dickhead? That is how language works. You don't get so-called. No, they are categories. You just don't agree that they're the awards. And then he goes, down in the bottom part, he goes, okay, Esports Awards, you've deleted the tweet that I quoted and everything from your website related to our company. Can you also remove this matter complete? Can you also remove this, another tweet, to close this matter completely? Again, and then it just goes down there. And you don't need to know what they say there, right? Here's the reason why I don't even consider that a good faith thing that he said. Because my brother, you work constantly with Perfect World doing events that take place in China. Now, if you don't know, guys, without getting political, China is another country, it's why I'm not going to go there in the future, that like working with ESL means you're working with the Saudi government also. If you work with any Chinese esports company, on some level you're working with the Chinese government because it isn't some free market there where you can just go and do business however you want. First of all, do you do business in China, you need a Chinese business partner who will work with you, potentially as like, oh, they're like a local partner. That's why you always hear that, like, and all our business partners and local partners, if it's like Starlad or anyone going there, you always have to work with these people. And then on top of that, there's then the scenario that when you have a local partner, I've found that tends to mean they have ties to the government itself. And they have some sort of like, maybe they're giving them a bribe or something, or they have to pay something, or they have to have a government guy on their board, or they have to have a government guy who comes and watches the event to see that nothing dodgy is being said or done, because they have a lot of control in that country. So what that means is this. When you imply you don't want to be associated with the Esports Awards because of the Saudis, that's what you're implying and getting all the plaudits. Everyone's congratulating. Oh, bravo, PGL. Bravo for taking a stand against that evil that is the Saudis and all that. No. Here's what I think. First of all, it makes me think, if you don't want to be associated with that because of what Saudi Arabia does, then logically you do want to be associated with everything the Chinese government does. Because it's inferred. You work with Perfect World. You're doing it now. You've done it many times. You've never had a problem. You've never said anything publicly about them. So logically, you are someone who wants to be associated with China and what they do. So if you go and look at what they're doing, let's say in a certain autonomous zone in their country, let's see what they do in terms of their political prisoners, etc. Logically, you want to be associated with that. So already, all of your virtue is gone in an instant. Only morons are going to give you that because they haven't thought this one through. Then secondly, as I've just pointed out earlier, I don't think the real reason they don't want to be involved with the Esports Awards is because of Saudi Arabia. I think it's because Saudi Arabia, through the PIF, Public Investment Fund, and Savvy Gaming Group own the ESL Faceit Group and now have partnered with the Esports Awards. So I think he sees that as ESL. So what he's really saying is, I've always hated ESL. Fuck ESL before, fuck ESL now. If I get a chance to fuck ESL like their execs at the major, I will. And you know what? Fuck everything ESL touches. So I don't even give him props for this. This is just more of his little petty war with ESL. This is nothing to do with giving a fuck about people in Saudi. You think Silvio gives a fuck about like a gay guy or a woman who's an activist in Saudi Arabia, and that's why he's making a public statement. Same company that can't even just admit publicly like they fucked up the VOD and what really was happening. Give me a break. It's not even vaguely plausible. Then how about, I just referenced Freya there. Oh, are you ready for some really hot tea? I know it's old, but this is fucking spicy. This might be a ginger turmeric type one. Shout out Gamer Subs. Because let's get into this. What if I told you Freya, lovely Freya, looks great, sounds great, great fan of the game, just a fucking wonderful person to be in Counter-Strike, exactly your dreamer who you'd want to be in Counter-Strike and work in our game. Think about when we were all young and there was no women in esports and we were all just a bunch of stinky nerds at fucking events. You would have dreamed that like a genuine, authentic fan grew up in the game, then became professional enough that they also looked great to represent our game, not just some weird looking nerd, and then also nails it professionally, can do a little bit of banter and be funny and do a good desk, but themselves never gets into any sort of trouble. Our dream hire would be someone like Freya, right? Never caused any problems with anyone. What if I told you they barred her access to this major? manager, and in doing so, fucked with her livelihood on 2 levels. So first of all, I've heard she wasn't even considered, and that's why she wasn't hired for this event, because they see her as an ESL/ESL face hire, right? So she couldn't work the event. Now what's funny is, I'm going to reference this later, she famously initially didn't get hired for PGL Stockholm after the online era, right? But to be fair, she was also less established then, and that was actually about the interview role. She later on came as the interviewer in the Globe Arena, the Ericsson Globe Arena, whatever, in Stockholm. And she was less established. It wasn't like a must-hire back then, but this is in 2024, where she's one of the main hosts. She's one of the 2 hosts. If you're hiring 2 hosts, you hire her, don't you? And they did hire her for Antwerp, so fair play, and as a desk host, but that was also like shortly after the ESL Face It thing, so I don't know what was going on in that scenario. So I won't say it's entirely just that, but I certainly think I've heard this time it was because of this ESL thing and they've up their war, as it were. But okay, that's one thing. You don't want to work in your event. It's your event, mate. You choose who works for you. You'll then be judged accordingly, but you choose who works for you, right? But okay, she can't work your event as a desk host. She can surely work the event in other contexts. She managed to get the HLTV interview gig. I will show you now. As it says there, once they knew she wasn't hired, HLTV posted 13th of March, "We are not missing out on a great hire. HLTV," and then this company, "are happy to present Freya Spears as the host for our upcoming PGLCS Major Copenhagen 2024 video coverage." Not just she's going to be there in our crew, she's the host of the coverage. Now, do you remember watching her content from that major? I'll tell you what, I remember seeing her do a pick'em video on their YouTube. I saw that, but I didn't see interviews from the major, especially once it got to the playoffs. I didn't saw shit. I saw Donna there doing the only pixel ones with her phone. I never saw Freya, a mega professional, working with HLTV, the main Counter-Strike outlet, by the way, the most embedded of all time. I never saw her doing them at the event. Do you know why? Well, here's a fun one. Even though I've heard she had a contract with HLTV to do these on-site interviews because she hadn't been hired for the event, I've heard PGL wouldn't give her a pass to go to the venue for the playoffs. They wouldn't let her in. Presumably because of the ESL beef. Now, I've heard, shout out to HLTV, I've heard they're so cool they paid her despite that, by the way. That's actually pretty legit. But I'm also a bit scared they paid her because they also didn't make a stink about it. You know, HLTV will go mad on me, not as much now. A lot of the people there are cool. They're like Nero, Demps and Note, and I even get along with Martin now, etc. But you know some of the other ones, Nomad, Striker, the ugly fucking ones, basically. That are ugly on the outside, that are ugly on the inside. I don't give a fuck, mate. I'll make funny all looks all I want. So those ones obviously have beef for me, don't they? Well, it's funny, they can call out everything, say Flashpoint's view bot in. They can say all sorts of shit all over the place. They can call out all the people who've done all sorts of like dodgy things outside the server, but they never made a big stink about this. Probably because if you did so, if you know how Sylvia and PGL work, you probably just get everyone kicked out the venue at that point. You'll just get blacklisted forever from ever working the major. And at the end of the day, absolutely HLTV relies upon both Valve software and the tournament organizers. Now you might go, no, it's the other way around. They rely on HLTV. They like list all the games and they do that because they currently have a monopoly, because everyone already agrees that they do that. If that was another website came along and all the TOs went to them and Valve went to them and gave that to them and said, you do, in fact, we have the IP rights with Valve software. You don't even get to collect that data. And because you're not hosting the servers or you're not listing the you don't even get the demo. You don't even get to scrape all that stuff for your database. That data is our data, actually. If they did that, they'd be within their rights, but they don't. So I think HLTV knew, no point fucking on. This is a Valve major. We need Valve. And two, we don't want PGL to be on their bad side, so we'll just swallow it. What we'll do, maybe I would speculate, is we'll just pay you. Sorry about that. We didn't want it either. I've heard some of the people internally knew it was fucked up. But what can we do about it? Now, sadly, they never made anything public. That's why I'm probably the first person making this public now, if people are listening to me as I speak. And as I say, I think that's absolutely disgraceful. Because that is someone who is a lovely person, no drama at all when they work for events or outside of events, hard worker, they're even someone who you want at your event covering it and doing great work. They're never involved in industry politics. Yes, that's a face it hire. Yes, that's an ESL hire. You'd never know it. You've never seen them ever involved in it. And even behind the scenes, I've heard there's no sort of Game of Thrones shenanigans going on with this individual. But what I think Freya shows you, she's the canary in the coal mine. That's how PGL will treat even an innocent bystander who they consider, I don't know, collateral damage in their war with ESL. If they think they can get away with shitting on you like that, that's what they'll do, especially if they think no one will go public. That's who PGL is, not some cool company that's not working with the Saudis because we're like too fucking virtuous, bro. Please remove this so we can resolve this case and end the support ticket. Like, fuck you. Fuck you. Then how about press stuff in general? Here's some more tea for you. I've heard that small outlets that came to do the playoffs and work this major and give as much media as they could, basically, they just ended up with a glorified ticket to just see the major. That's all they got, because they had no way to access players after matches. The press room, I've heard, was on the opposite side of the arena to the backstage area where the player comes out. And that when people would say, well, can I get interviews? Like, how am I supposed to get interviews with players? They were just told by PGL staff, oh, just like DM their manager on Twitter and coordinate it yourself. And in fact, don't even meet here. Meet them somewhere else, like at the hotel to do an interview. That's insanity. The time to get an interview is right after the game, ideally where players walk out. There's a press area they have to walk through or two. As they go there, yes, people come and ask and they can say no, it's always their prerogative, but that allows you an appropriate moment and setting for the player to think, I should probably do an interview in some media now to get the word out there, and also for you to politely ask them. The idea you're going to Twitter DM their manager, who's probably not even checking his DMs, or he might have a million DMs right at that moment after a game, and if you're a nobody outlet, they're not going to check your message anyway, or they might not even have DMs open. And then if you are a nobody, even if they say yes, they're going to be like, right, well, where are you? I'll come to you. Oh, you can't come to my area. Oh, let's meet at your hotel room and I'll do like a one-on-one interview with Monacy. That's not happening. That's an insane request. That's never going to be the case. You're basically telling people when you say this, we'll cut it off. There's only a couple of people get interviews and none of the small outlets. Now, I'll give a shout out to a team here, which is I heard at this major, FaZe, who made the final, still went out of their way to do interviews with people and give opportunities to people. So shout out to that guy, Eddie, who's the manager at FaZe. Sounds like they're just cool as fuck. Now, what's interesting is I heard if you were one of like the big dogs at this major as press or a broadcast partner, I think they had like 5 or 6 broadcast partners, then they had this like small mixed zone backstage where there's like a mixture of players and staff and press, etc., and broadcast partners. And that basically, if you were the big dogs, you could get in there and then maybe you could grab some players after they came out. But even so, because this was the place to be, it was completely full. And here's a joke. I heard HLTV wasn't even initially allowed in. Now, later, I've heard they got their own spot, probably because they complained or just like she fucking pushed up the ladder. And it's not just free at that point. It's everyone from their fucking staff. I've heard they complained. They got their own little spot. As logically, if they're going to have this position in the community, they probably should have. But I've heard instead it was people like Onipixels people, BTS Brazil, TV2 Denmark, whoever the fuck the Russian language partner was. And so the problem is, it meant that since teams often don't want to do media anyway, like the players who play the game, because they don't understand media is what they actually get paid for, not just shooting people in the head, their game doesn't provide enough revenue at all. You need to help the sponsors, help the exposure, help the size of the game to grow, you idiot. Get people interested in you specifically so they buy that product you're sponsored by because they like you and believe it's a good product. Since players, if they can get away with it, don't want to do media anyway, I've heard they just stayed in that little mixed zone. And by the way, especially, think about it, it was in the quarterfinals, the first round of the playoffs with that stage storming and an invasion. I've heard after that, players didn't want to do it at all. Now they were way more hesitant to do anything with anyone they don't already know, understandably, because who the fuck could this guy be? So if you were a small outlet, you're shit out of luck. If I'd have been starting as a journalist, I went to this major, you'd never heard of me. I'd have never had a chance to do anything, no matter how good I was. That's just fucked up. By the way, I've heard Antwerp was almost as bad as this. It's just it got fixed. Like I've heard basically, they just luckily at Antwerp had a few people who would coordinate between press and the orgs. Like instead of them saying you DM the team manager, it's like you could DM them and then basically maybe they would contact the team and help you out, etc. Also, I've heard some of the teams were just cool enough to go to the press area. Antwerp, again, shout out to FaZe. They just seem to be one of the cooler ones who get media. And that's, by the way, in that particular case, at least the press room I've heard was quite close by. So at least someone could just take a short detour. They're not going to go if they already don't want to do an interview all the way over the other side of the venue to let some outlet they don't know exists do an interview with them. That's implausible. You're essentially limiting the press when you do that. Now, if you want to contrast that, by the way, I've heard Blast has a setup where teams basically have to walk through a mixed zone that has all the press there. So anyone can go up and ask them, etc. Now, look, they can say no, but anyone can go and get the access. It's up to you. You can hustle then. Like J. Jonah Jameson, freelance, best thing you can do. You can go and hustle and become the best at your job if you are actually that good. If you don't know, by the way, people like Freya, long before she worked for Faceit, began that way. She went to big events and majors and just went to the side and got a player and did like a quick interview with like Kenny AS or Apex or something like that. I think it was Apex. She said it in my Reflections interview. Now, I've heard ESL also has some requirements. Like I've heard they tell you to message player managers and all that jazz. But again, they forward the player manager forwards your request to the team manager. Oh no, sorry, I've got it the wrong way around. Blast just has the mix zone. I think it's ESL that forwards the message from the player manager, as in they mean like liaison to players that you're working with as press, to the team manager of the team. And then that means that at least you can get a message as a small outlet to the team. Now, if they choose to reply or not, that's another thing, but it's coming from an ESL person, so they're more likely to check and reply, right? By the way, I'll also throw this out there. Since the PGL Copenhagen Major was in the Royal Arena, I've heard it also could be a Royal Arena issue. But if that's true, then do like some of the other people have said, like, where they have like liaisons or whatever, have people who actually can coordinate this and also put the press room nearby the player area, even if that's an issue in the arena. Like maybe they don't want people to have access to all areas of the arena. I get that. You have security concerns yourself as the people who run the Royal Arena, right? Also, by the way, if that's such a concern, but it's not at other events around the world, consider not hosting it in that Royal Arena. Maybe that's an issue. You're not going to get full media at that point in time. Then, how about this? Here's a detail I've mentioned recently, but it was just like a small detail that went by in the big flow of press, and people haven't focused on how bad this is. I mentioned it on my stream before. See this post here? This is from the 4th of July, and it's when they were talking about doing the major in Shanghai. They said PGL has secured the media rights for the Perfect World CS2 Shanghai Major 2024, and we will be producing the English broadcast remotely for both the RMR and the Major. Save the dates and join us for this thrilling event. Now, rewind. And we will be producing the English broadcast, so they're taking Perfect World's Major and they're doing the broadcast. Good so far, quite a common thing. I've worked events that were Perfect World events, like the CS2 Asia Championships in 2019, where it might look like a Chinese event. It was really the PGL people hiring. You look at the people they hired, it was PGL. That's who I was working with, PGL people. Then I got there and there was Chinese people liaising with them. So the key word there is remotely. They're going to produce the English broadcast for the Major and the RMR. The RMRs are in China too, but for the Major from... I've heard, not just remotely, I've heard from their home country of Romania. I heard they're just going to do it in Romania. Now that is already fucking bonkers. First of all, if people don't know, this isn't even just a thing that you see from PGL just for this one. Remember, when they did PGL Stockholm, they initially planned for the desk and the broadcast talent to entirely be in Romania the whole time. The event would have taken place in Sweden, and we'd have just been sat in a studio in their offices in Romania. But there was so much stink behind the scenes kicked up. They just changed that from like the Swiss systems, they did that. And then they let us go out to Stockholm for the playoffs or whatever I think it was. And then we were out there and we were doing the proper games and it was a mega environment. We were there, etc., etc., etc. So this time the whole major, all the people you're listening to on the English language broadcast is going to be sat in the studio, I think in Romania, not in China with a totally different time zone, and they're not going to be in the arena. Now that is mental. That's so shitty for an English language stream. First of all, talent not being in the building is mad for them. They didn't actually get to attend that major. They didn't get to be part of the celebrations and have drinks with the players and meet fans and see the ambience and hear the roar of the crowd and see the stage things and the pyrotechnics. They just watched it all on stream like we did, watched it on the fucking program monitor. That's whack. That's literally like a bucket list moment taken from some of those talent people there. Some of them probably never even did a massive event in China. There haven't been many massive events in China for Counter-Strike. Then also, I can tell you right now, that's going to actually nerf the event in many sense. You know, when the analyst has a drink with that player at the end of the day in the bar at the hotel, that's where he gets some of the info. That's where someone like maybe a Bobski or a Yanko or certain other people who are ex-pros, Pimp, etc. That's where they would go and they tap up their source and they get some info. They get an info about a veto or what did they think of that or what are people thinking going forwards in the tournament or is there going to be player changes? You're not going to get that. They're not going to be in the venue. Then secondly, it's going to mega nerf casters because I can tell you one of the big thrills for casters is at a minimum to be in the arena, hear the roar of the crowd and feel the ambience and get that electric energy that's going around you and then feed off that, have it fuel you so you get totally hyped and you're in the game and you're just living counter. That's the best moment that comes. Right? Sure, it was already going to be scuffed anyway if they went to China because they'd have been the piggyback broadcast, which means they would have been using the feed of the other people probably, and the casting would have been all in Chinese in the arena because obviously everyone in the arena speaks Chinese primarily and not going to speak that much English, right? That's just the way it is going to be in China. And like France, you tend to do the local crowd thing there because certain countries just don't want to speak English in the arena. So it already would have killed the vibe a bit. It's going to kill the vibe even more if they're halfway around the world, mate. That's going to be so fucking bad. Then add in the time zone thing. What's that going to mean for when they're getting up, when they go to sleep? What about people who are going to come from North America, fly to Europe, have the jet lag there, and then do an event with different hours that's taking place in chat? What are we doing? What is this? Like, this is just clownery across the board. And somehow, because people love PGL or they love the Copenhagen Major, we're just letting that slide. If that was ESL, my God, if that was Flashpoint, you'd all be shitting your pants and saying the sky was falling and your hair was on fire. I've got a few more for you. Don't worry. Then it gets funny. Here's a good one for you. What if I told you that for TI that they just ran, it was in Copenhagen. You know Copenhagen, where they've just had a major for CS2, the PGL Copenhagen major. Well, when they ran TI, here's the merch that they made. At least it's posted to Reddit, and as far as I can tell, this is true. This merch was made. Now, I'll just let you look at this for a second. So it's like a cool like jersey with like it's got the fucking TI thing there. The International, 5 stars. Now, I've been to Denmark loads of times. I've seen it written Copenhagen with 1 P. I've seen it written like Copenhagen or something with like a K and like the O with the line through it, which is more like the what do we call it? Dano-Norwegian or whatever the fuck that language was called. I've seen it like written that way. I've never ever seen it written, presumably in English, Copenhagen, 2 Ps. Do you know why? It isn't spelt that way, and in no context is spelt that way. That's just a typo, but that's how it's going out. Lol, it's going out like that. That's what happened to their merch, apparently. Apparently, on their website, it was taken down later, I was told, and in real life, that's what their merch said. They had a misspelling of where they've already had an event there for the CS2 major. That's apparently on the TI merch, what it said on their shit. You bought one and it just said Copenhagen. And are you ready for an insane angle? This could be a Reddit meme, but I've got to put it out there because it looked plausible, I have to say. The saddest thing is, I've become so cynical about how these behave and the fact they'll never admit they were wrong or apologise that I actually think this is real. Get ready for this. It's claimed by a guy on Reddit. Who knows if it's true? Look here. This guy goes, just picked up some official merch. Valve renaming the city. Banter way to put it, by the way, because obviously that's not the way it's spelled. This guy here goes, get ready, this is mega. He goes, a quick search on Wikipedia would suggest that maybe it is a way of how locals would spell it. I love that already, because an American went on the internet and went, well, since it says this on Reddit, I reckon maybe it just is spelt that way. Bro, we're not talking about some obscure fact. There's going to be loads of Danish people on Reddit, and they're going to know if that's true or not. You're just talking out your arse, aren't you? So then this guy goes, no, we spell it Copenhagen for English, or as I said before, Copenhagen or Haven in Danish. Copenhagen is pure nonsense. Now, we have to assume he's telling the truth. In this case, I can't know, but it seems plausible. I tried Googling. So then you might wonder, well, why would he say a quick search on Wikipedia, though? Get ready for this. He goes, who would edit a Wikipedia page for a city? And then this guy, as a joke, I assume, goes, PGL staff members trying to avoid getting fired. But then this guy actually goes, wait a minute, holy fuck. I ran that IP that changed it to 2 Ps through domain tools, and just look who it's registered to. And then the org name it claims, I don't know if this is true, is SC PGL Esports SRL, which I believe is like the company, the shell company or whatever that owns PGL Esports. So the implication there is, just like how they edited the things wrong and then someone just didn't listen within PGL, but that also could have been AI and automated when it came to the VPG2 crash. That's implying for real that somewhat PGL staff fucked up the merch and then thought, shit, people are going to Google it and see that's not how you spell Copenhagen. And then went and edited Wikipedia themselves so that briefly for a while, Wikipedia said like Copenhagen and then in brackets it was like Copenhagen and then it was like Copenhagen. It just had like a fake one added there so that if you Googled, I guess that is right actually. The PGL was right after all. Even though if that's true, I hope that isn't true. I hope that's just a Reddit meme. Because if that's true, that's even more mental because now you think you can cover up the name of the capital city of Denmark for the whole world and all of history with one little quick Google edit into a Wikipedia. Like, are you out of your mind? But I'd just say that just seems par for the course for PGL at this point in time. So let's get into my history of PGL and one of the reasons I'm making this video. Because I'll be totally upfront with you, by the way. I probably wouldn't have made this video if I'd have worked with PGL. Now, certainly, I'm legit like this. I would have given all this same info that came my way to journalists who weren't working the event as talent and said, listen, if you want the story, go and publicise this, go and do this. I'd be a hypocrite if I did it. I'm working with them. I'm co-signing them on some level, but I want people to get the info out there because I've always told people, if you work the event, I get it, you might feel like you can't say anything or it might fuck up your livelihood, but just tell the other people the legit info and let the other people who aren't working the event hold their feet to the fire, hold them accountable, do so. So you know what? Being as PGL, as you're going to find out, is fucked with me. I'm going to be that person. I'm going to hold PGL accountable. I think already in this one video, I've shown them that I have a skill set they do not want to fuck with. That is quite different to so many other people out there, and even some of the press people. Even they aren't in a position to publicise a video like this and get this info out there. So you probably picked the wrong enemy to fuck with. It's funny, if you want to play Game of Thrones, if you want to play like espionage and intrigue, then actually understand the players of the game, dickhead. Understand who is dangerous. Understand who you could ally with intelligently and who fucking with would be the last move you'd ever want to motherfucking do, son. Because I've told people this before. I'm the last person, I mean, Rich Lewis is up there too, who you want to fuck with in this industry. I've always said this. You use lies and unfair behaviour to castigate or to crush me, and I will castigate and crush you using the truth and real things that you've done. Skeletons that are in your motherfucking closet. By the way, I haven't got skeletons in my closet. All my sins are out there for the world to see. There are a few jokes on Twitter. All your sins, well, we see here, there's all sorts going on behind the scenes. Even when it's something that's out there as a light story, like the remote thing, maybe people didn't bring enough attention to it. Maybe the right importance wasn't placed around that, framing it so that fans understood how important that issue was. So now we'll get to my own history, which is in early CSGO. Yeah, I always had issues with how they ran the events. I'll give you an example. One day I was at one of their events in Romania, and at the end of the day, there was no, this is how unprofessional events were back then. There wasn't like a total schedule for the whole event that I got sent, or someone telling me in a group chat, like, right, be here, call time, 10 a.m. That happened later, and especially at like ESL events where Germans run it. But when I was at this event here, it was just being done sort of by ear. So at the end of the day of the working, I just went to some like production guy and said, like, oh, by the way, what time do I have to come tomorrow? Like, I'm going to nip it off now. So what time do I need to be here? And he said, like, oh, be here at like 10 a.m. So I was like, okay, I think it'd be like a really late day. Remember back then we had no breaks. So we used to just work until like midnight, 2 a.m. sometimes. So I think I got up after something mental, like 3 or 4 hours sleep, had my shower, quickly ate some breakfast, went to the venue at 10 a.m. It was completely empty. It was just me and a few people just like, I mean, of like talent or people working the event. Like it was just people putting some scaffolding up or something. So the worst thing is I was going up to some of the people doing scaffolding, like, is there anyone here I can talk to? Like, where is everyone? And there was, some of them would just sort of look, I won't say that they were like, no speaking English, because they're fucking Romania, of course they speak English. They were just sort of like, I don't know, mate. Sorry, listen, I'm just doing this. I have no idea. They weren't production people at all. And so I'm just stood around for like an hour, 2 hours. Eventually, Silvio himself comes, and I just say to him, like, what the fuck's going on, mate? Why am I here now? And I find out, by the way, someone just tells me something later, like when I ask him or someone else, that like, I think the game started at something, I'm going to say like 1 p.m. or something, and I'd been told to be there for 10 a.m. So I'm just there for ages, wrecked my sleep, wrecked my whole day. And then he just tells me something like, well, who told you it was 10 a.m.? And I said, Vlad, because that's what the guy had said his name was. And are you ready for like an actual fucking meme? You would think this was like an SNL skit for something about, for ignorant people about Romania. He goes, Vlad, well, that won't stand. He turns around, I'm not even trolling. There's a guy stood like right there, and he goes, Vlad, why have you told him this? And he goes, I didn't say that. I've never even spoken. I go, no, not him. And he goes, well, who? And I go, some guy called Vlad. He goes, it's like a troll. He goes to another guy and goes, why have you said this? And he goes, I've never met this guy. I go, it's not him either. And he goes, well, who? I go, I don't fucking know. It's everyone here called Vlad. And it turns out like every fucking person in their company seemingly apparently is called Vlad. If you don't know, by the way, are you ready for the ultimate meme that built on this years later? 3 or 4 years later, when the top production people at PGL got hired by ESL, do you know what their nickname was, those two people? The two Vlads, and they were both called Vlad something. Listen, I love Bram Stoker's Dracula too, but you've gone too far with that country. Anyway, that's an example already. They always had tech problems, by the way. We were always working super late hours. Now, look, that was the same with a lot of companies. There was always tech problems. I think it was worse here. DreamHack was pretty bad too, I'll say. I think it was a bit scuffed sometimes. PGL was one of the worst for tech problems. But again, because you thought the original guy's OG and he's trying to do it as an independent and not get into bed with all the evil people, and he's even saying he's against them all, and he's even publicly going to battle with them, you thought to yourself, you know what? I'll put up with some of these issues. Again, if people are nice, polite and kind, you'll put up with a lot for them, won't you? If they're dickheads, you won't put up with anything. That's just the way life works. But then we go and we skip to my last event with them, PGL Stockholm 2021. Now, there's a whole episode where me and Richard on By the Numbers, a massive one, do a green room edition where we decided we might never be able to work this event again, mate. It was so bad, the conditions and the way we were treated. We're going to have to put this all out there because we're legit. That's who we are. And if they don't hire us again or don't work with us, or maybe we won't work with them, by the way, then so be it. Like, I believe actually Richard wasn't interested in working with them for PGL Antwerp. I think they gave him the offer, by the way. I know because Silvio himself contacted me and offered both me. I was the first person to find out he was getting PGL Antwerp. I was immediately offered the gig to work PGL Antwerp. And I think he even said something like, you can reach out to Richard and tell him we want him and you again. Because if you don't know, when they did Stockholm, So, by the way, what I'm saying is when we did the Briar the Numbers episode, we were willing to accept that. If that means we never get hired again, so be it. We have to get the truth out there because it was insane, the drama behind the scenes on that one and the logistical fuck-ups and the basic production errors. It was actually offensive how bad that event was. It reminded me of an event from 2015, but it was in 2021 with the biggest prize money major ever, and it ended up being the most viewed major ever. So I didn't want to live in a world where the most viewed major ever, treated like the best ever, was mega scuffed and was way, even though I don't like ESL, was way worse than an ESL event. So we talked about it all in that issue there. But even from the hiring of the event, there was problems. Because what happened for that event was, this is exactly how different my relationship with PGL used to be. I remember being contacted by Sylvie from PGL, who told me, we want you and Richard for this major, because we're going to basically build this major talent crew around you and bring back a bunch of old school people and make like a sick event for the first major after the online period, right? I remember thinking, what a dope idea. So they said, we want you involved at all stages of the process. We want you to tell us who you think we should hire and who your suggestions would be and what sort of event type you would want it to be and what you have to say in some of the content. I even said to them, are we going to do like shoulder content? Oh, yeah, don't worry about that. We never did any of that, by the way, any of that whatsoever. So what happened was, when it came to hires, they were asking me, who do you think I should hire? Before they've hired anyone. I think they'd only hired me and Richard. And then when we started saying names, I think they then said something like, oh, we've also hired, I think the first ones they told me was Bardolph and DDK, because I think maybe they did events with them before. Because by the way, since Bardolph and DDK were Face It, you notice Bardolph and DDK were often on DreamHack, PGL, and Face It, because these were all the resistance against ESL. And then the ESL wouldn't hire some of these people. I mean, they wouldn't hire Bardolph because he said, what up in this bitch at your major in your Lanxess, when he were told don't swear on camera, and then said this isn't Face It simple, advertising a rival broadcast company. Now it's owned by the same people, but a rival's POG service to ESEA, which was ESL's POG service. So he'd been enough of a dick on that behaviour. I also don't blame him for not hiring. He was also, by the way, the guy who hired talent for Face It. So it's also totally inappropriate then, and he's getting hired to work someone else's event. And then he's denying people from working events, because that's why it's so hilarious. Like I said in that green room edition, he cried about the old boys club. He was the old boys club of hiring people. Me and Richard never had the power to do that. I had the power at Flashpoint, and spoiler, I hired Bardolph, even though I don't like him, because I actually just thought we don't have that, beggars can't be choosers. I've got to hire him. He's one of the best, and I'm working with Face It anyway. Obviously it's going to be part of his salary to work with us. So even the talent hires were scoffed. So they immediately told us, well, look, it's you and Richard, but okay, I've also got DDK and Bardolph, right? My problem immediately there was like, right, Bardolph does Apex Legends now, mates, and barely does CS, and hasn't done CS in years. And then DDK is literally a Valorant caster, mate. He's literally off doing Valorant. And you remember when they hired DDK, his first game, I think, at the major, he called the Deagle the Sheriff, which is the equivalent gun from Valorant, because that's how Valorantized his brain was, Valorante child's game. Even though, by the way, I was still fine with hiring DDK, because he is still one of the best CS minds ever. And if he puts his mind to the game, he could be fabulous. I actually heard he could still work stuff now in CS. I hope people hire him as an analyst. He's one of the all-time great colour commentators in Counter-Strike. He's got a very interesting way of thinking about the game. But already that made me a little bit sus of like, are they really listening to me? Because I wouldn't necessarily have said hire those people. Like, I would actually have rather told you at this point, maybe now is when you hire scrawny launders. Maybe this is where you bring in Harry and Hugo. They sort of earned it in the online beer, haven't they? Oh, wait a second, the Harry and Hugo ESL people, I guess they can't be hired then, my bad. Scrawny and Launders Blast people, my bad, I guess can't hire them. So I'll just show you right now. Remember the first scandal after the hires, when it was announced who the hires were, was there was no women hired. Now, a moron like Jonas Gunnarsson was like, no, only what? There's just one non-white man, because he just quickly looked at it. He made it about being white and a man. But that was nonsense. First of all, it wasn't even true. There was a bunch of mixed race people on there. There was even bloody Blair, who's just Indian, but who's like mixed race. And then, as well as Bardolph. And then also, the whole angle then was span into the whole thing like, well, there's all the women. Now, I actually remember thinking, the problem with that is this. People aren't going to want to politically hear this, but you could do that event without women. There are definitely good enough people in every role without being women. But when there's no women at all, and some of them, it wasn't just because of the ESL things, they hadn't been bought by the Saudis yet, you do start to wonder, like, but why no women though? Is that because there are now in the modern day some extremely good women who are the best at their role, like surely one or two. Now, just to show you, sadly, I can't show you the page itself, but again, I haven't lied in 23 years doing my job. You can trust that this is in fact a DM to Sylvie. My suggestion went like this. On the 18th of September, I said, for interviewing, and here are the three names I suggested. I suggested Frankie Ward, Freya Space, And Banks, James Banks, I said, are all good. Notice 2 of those 3 are women. I'm even sort of loading it up. That's obviously a role that women excel at, doing the interviews, isn't it? Because when you're talking to a bunch of nerds, what better than to have a beautiful, professional, well-presented woman who's confident, who can speak to them, but because she's not a man who might have like a hostile interaction with them, or they might have like some ego thing, like, who are you and what are you? None of that. They open up to them. I think it's actually the best type of person you can hire for interviews. Also great for stage host and desk host. As a result, Snick Smick's probably the greatest stage host of all time in esports. Shout out Rachel Cohen Red Eye though. So if you look here, I told them basically, I suggest these 3 people. They only hired Banks out of that list. They didn't hire Freya or Frankie. And by the way, I'm so legit. I said this in the Thorin versus Frankie video. This is after Frankie's been a total piece of shit to me for years and fucked with my livelihood and my reputation. But I'm so legit. If someone actually asks me who's good at this job, I will recommend you if I think you are good. So if you don't know, I think Frankie is fabulous at fucking interviews. All the things that annoy you about her interview style are actually features, not bugs, that get a better interview or a better interview answer. Meanwhile, if someone just goes up there and kisses the player's arse and doesn't ask that hard question or be annoying, you just won't get a sick answer sometimes. So I can actually appreciate that part of her job. I've always thought professionally she's quite good. She's just an arsehole as a human being. So I recommended those people. So then when I had to sit back and everyone on the internet said not only was PGL sexist for hiring, but it was probably something like me and Richard Lewis said no women allowed because we just hate women when we're stinky right-wing red pill people or whatever the fuck nonsense people say. Or people going, I guess no women would want to work with Richard Lewis and Thorin. An absurd concept considering how many women we've given the start to, given jobs to, hired, work with to this day and promote. It's insane. But I had to sit through all that, knowing the whole time I suggested to hire Frankie and Freya. And if it was up to me, I would have hired them. Spoiler, this is around the time where I've already done Flashpoint. And what did I do? That's right, I hired Freya. I hired Potter and made her my primary analyst. ESL wasn't putting Potter on big events. DreamHack had given her 1 DreamHack Masters ever. She was on the smaller circuit of DreamHack. She'd have just been on ESL Impacts to this day if she was just working with ESL and working in CS as an analyst. I put her as a primary analyst because I worked with her at Epicenter. I knew her from ages before. We were both in SK Gaming in 1.6. I remember just thinking, she can do it, mate. She's so good. And all you have to do, like I did on Flashpoint, is just encourage her a bit. And you'll also see that secret side that she has when she competes, where she can be a bit toxic. She can be edgy. She can shit talk. She can be harsh and criticize people. And we made her no longer that fluffy, sort of like soft, like anti fucking Potter, Christine. We made her that one from that skit where she became a bit more toxic and she was willing to flame people a little bit and she got spicy. If you don't know, when she didn't get the gigs in CS, she just fucked off to Valorant and became Czech Note's world championship coach. She won champions in 2022 with Evil Geniuses. Does that even make sense? Surely it was 2023. Yeah, obviously it was last year, 2023. There you go, with Evil Geniuses. By the way, which wasn't even the best players in the world. Some of them were even like questionable pickups that she had to say in hiring. So again, the idea I had to go suffer all the slings and arrows that I'm the one making women not be hired. Then they tried to make that event remote, like I said earlier. They tried to have it, so the whole event, we would just be in Romania. I wouldn't have gotten to experience that amazing Globen that I've already experienced for like WCS Season 2 Europe when I was in StarCraft as a journalist. That was an incredible atmosphere, the one with Stefano, one with no practice. Then there was obviously that DreamHack 1, Invitational 2 in 2014, where Titan came. It was the one where Fnatic was late. Then they turned up and got ultra body bagged by Titan with Kaylee and Kenny S. Maybe Kaylee was cheating, double AWPing. Then in the final, it was the French Civil War after the French Shuffle, which was LDLC of Happy and Shocks and MBK and Smiths and Kiyashima against Titan with Kaylee and Existence and Kenny S. And actually, Titan won that one. Existence called a banger. Kenny S played out his match, probably the best player in the world at the time. And then they won that event. That was the one where Semler tripped over when he was on stage. This is a mega arena, by the way. It's a really dope place to have an event. We wouldn't have been there. We would have just been in Romania in a studio, in the PGL studio. Brilliant. So then at that event, I point this out in the past, so I won't make this too long. There was tech issues galore. There was times where, even though the tech room, first of all, it's their home base studio. They're not in a different venue. ESL does their venues around the world and just set it up and make it all work. They're in their home venue and they're having tech issues where I'm in this room here and literally if I open a door and walk 4 meters, that is the production room. The guy in there is the one fucking up all my shit. And actually they would have a tech problem, stuff like, I've mentioned this before, where it would sound like as I'm listening in my headset in one of my ears, instead of being program coming in of like the sound of the broadcast, I would be hearing the sound of like static. When you have like a guitar, you plug it into an amp, but you don't fully plug it in. It's slightly hanging out. You know that sort of like a really bad static that sort of signal jams your brain the whole time. I would have that playing in my ears while I was talking to someone. And I would be saying, that's a great point. Got something in my ear here, but yeah, I think that's what's going on. I would keep giving signals. I would even, by the way, when they cut to a shot of the other two people on the desk, I would be looking into the other camera that's not the one showing on program to try and help them and going like, doing like shit, and they were ignoring me completely. They were just ignoring us completely for whole segments while this was going on. I had times where there was sound feedback, like a loop and echo of what I've just said a few seconds earlier, signal jamming my brain as I'm talking. Now, you'll never notice if you watch the broadcast, because aside from when I weave in, like there's something going on, of course, I'd like to hear what you have to say about Yanko, but I'd also like to hear this segment because I've got some problems here, and I'd like, in a clever way, do that. Even so, I still deliver all my lines. I still nail it. I still analyze. I still make jokes. I still pretend I can hear Richard sometimes when I can't, when there's problems. There's also times when either he couldn't hear us or we couldn't hear him, and the whole time they cut to us, by the way, he would be on that bloody mic going like the feed talkback, which we didn't have, saying like there's tech problems, sound problems here, and we would have whole segments where they didn't fix it, or at the end they'd go, it'll be fixed for next time, guys. One thing, I'm going to get to this later, they would never apologize for the problems. They would just go, oh, yeah, I guess that's just how it is. Oh, yeah, it was someone else. It was always like deflection. It was someone else. Or, oh, I think someone just didn't check something. It'll be fixed for next time. It would never just like, sorry, we fucked up. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again. We know that's unprofessional. Never any of that shit. And by the way, I'll just throw this out there. The fact that they tried to do it remote until we sort of mutinied behind the scenes is also why you didn't get to see Sadikist do that major in the playoffs. Because since we went to Romania first, he then chose, instead of the rest of us went through Amsterdam, I obviously live in the Netherlands, the rest of us went through Amsterdam to go to Sweden. At the time, because of like some shit in Eastern Europe, you couldn't just fly straight from Romania. There weren't like direct flights. So the other option was you could go through Germany to Sweden. Now, I will say, I'll put this blame 50% on PGL, 50% on Sadikist, 50% on PGL, because if you know Sadikist, and you do, you've worked with him a long time, and you know some of the issues that you've had, you just tell him, we're booking you on that one to Amsterdam to go through, then go to Stockholm. Because then if there's any issues, you'd rather be dealing with that Dutch guy. Hey, mate, what's going on with this? Where are you going, though, man? Are you going there for work or what? Like some chill Dutch guy who's like got a machine gun on his back telling you that. As opposed to, I don't know, crazy idea here, guys. If I was ever going to have anything wrong with my passport or some sort of issue getting through customs, what country might even be historically associated with the idea of like people being really strict around rules and even literally saying the phrase, papers, please? Oh, Germany. I think I'd keep someone like that who's a ticking time bomb in many respects. I'd keep them away from Germany. No, you let him go through Germany and he just had some sort of like passport problem. And for real, they just like straight deported his ass to Canada, I think. And that's why he couldn't do the event. One of the best casters, which then was the spark, which if you watch that Green Room episode, sparked the whole drama with changing the schedule of who did what games for the playoffs and caused the whole thing where Bardolph had the tantrum and went mental and then called out people, threw people under the bus. It was going to fuck Moses. Then he was calling me and Richard out on the fucking day. Oh, it was insane. And by the way, I had nothing to do with any of that at any time. I was just hearing some of that stuff and going on with my fucking life. So there's that part too. Then I've told this story before in the Green Room thing of By the Numbers, but I'll very quickly retell it here, which is Silvio himself directly fucked me a whole week on the topic of the show match. Now, what people might not know is I've never done a show match at an ESL event or any major. Never done a single show match ever in Counter-Strike. Because in the old days, this might sound weird, but a lot of people in the esports industry take my on-camera persona at face value. So a lot of people, even when I work events, are intimidated me, by the way. They don't think I'm approachable, or they think I'm going to be hostile, or I'm going to roast them or flame them, or I'm going to be like, who the fuck are you? Like some diva or whatever. That's what they're worried about. So as a result, I think in the past, they were just scared that I thought it was frivolous and I don't give a fuck about show matches, so why would I do it? So they never asked me before. And there might have even been a perception, I think some people thought this, a bit like why they thought I wouldn't ever play CS on stream, that I also won't do it because then people will see I'm shit at CS and I'll be exposed as a fraud. I've never cared about that. It's actually the other way around. So what happened was, famously, it was Starladder that fucked up first. When I went to Starladder, they were going to, it's like Chad's idea, I think, Sponge, they were going to do a 1.6 show match. And I told, sign me up, mate. I played 1 billion hours of 1.6. I said, also, in 1.6, I know all the op mechanics, mate. I said, I'll make that show match exciting as fuck. I'll be like fucking no-scoping simple if you put me in that show match. So they originally planned to do a show match, and then it just never happened. I think they said something, I ran out of time. So similar thing for Stockholm, right? I had, through Richard, They basically communicated to me like, oh, like, Sylvia wants to know, would you do this show match? We talk about this all in the By the Numbers thing. And basically I was like, yeah, I'm up for it. So then they start planning the show match thematically to be around me. Like, well, maybe one team could be like, I don't know, either people like Thorin used to beef with, like maybe him and Device could squash the beef by playing on the same team. But then maybe you could have, and he could play with his friends like Get Right or whatever. Or the other team could be people he's flamed. Like maybe we get Smiths there and fucking, and Get Right himself or some Exist or something. Maybe we get these players that he's flamed and it's like their chance to kill him, almost like a charity thing where they get to kill me and get like a good feeling in front of the crowd and show me that, look, you might talk shit about us outside the server, but inside the server, we got you, bitch ass. By the way, I'm a good sport. I would put someone over. I would give them the win then. But also, you put me in that show match, mate. I don't care if I go 0 for 12. I would go for the craziest knives, kills, flanks, no scopes, all the time. I understand entertainment. So I was totally up for that. In fact, because I was in Stockholm and I was only asked about this at the event, I even went to one of those fucking PC shops in Stockholm and bought a fucking brand new mouse and keyboard that were the same or roughly the same as my mouse and keyboard at home for this fucking show match. During the event, I'll show you on screen now, because this was a thing that was going to happen on the last day, I even teased it. Like, look, I even did this tweet. On the 4th of November, so not the last day, I put Jame in the show match versus me, because this is when VP was doing that notorious wind the clock down shit. And Jame was at the time one of the people I had an antagonistic relationship to as an analyst. I put Jame in the show match versus me. I'll show him how it's done. As in, instead of him doing that pussy saving op shit, I'll fucking show him aggro up in like prime simple and fucking wreck this fucker. And he won't have his team to save him, will he then? So I was even teasing the idea I could be in a show match for PGL. It would be a fucking crazy coup, wouldn't it? That I'm in my first show match ever and the biggest one ever in CS. Then what happened was, it got to the last day, they were still working out the teams, they were looking at the lineups. There was even a whole thing where it's like, oh, what are we doing here? And then what happened was, if you ever remember seeing the semi-finals, at the end of the last semi-final, on camera, we even say something like, and tomorrow, of course, we'll have the show match coming up. I then quickly cut in and say something, and let's see who's going to be there, or, you know, what will happen. It'll be, I say something where I sort of tease, like it could be something interesting, but I don't say I'm working it, I just hint at it, right? The next day I wake up, and I just see in the talent chat where they tell you all the stuff from PGL, they just say the two teams for the show match. And then I'm listed as working the show match as an analyst. And the teams are the teams that we were discussing before, but instead of me, they've just put Zeus from Navi, who doesn't even play CS anymore, but turned up at the event. So basically, I will speculate, they were planning this whole thing the whole week where they've asked me to do this. I didn't ask them to. They've asked me to do it and repeatedly messaged that this is happening. I've gone and bought a mouse and a keyboard. And then what's happened is, I think Zeus just rocked up to the major a day or two before the end. And Sylvia or someone at PGL seen Zeus and just gone, oh shit, Zeus, put him in the show match and just kicked me out the show match without ever telling me, because I'm going to get into this, they can't apologise in their country. They can't ever say they're wrong. They always have to double down or ignore what happened and pretend it didn't. La, 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 there was never a show match with you and what you're talking about. So as a result, I not only was never told I'm not working the show match, they just announced the show match rosters, but then I even had to, like something like 2 hours after that, like a fucking professional, put on my suit and tie, get washed, go there, still analyse the game like a real game. I analysed it completely. I was funny. I was entertaining. I then worked the final afterwards. You're also pissing off one of your lead analysts, by the way, who you claim to have built the whole show around for before the fucking grand final of the biggest major ever. Are you out of your mind? But I'm such a pro. I'm not like James Bardolph. I won't use the actual desk to do a petty little shitty shout out and ruin everything and be a dickhead and put my dirty laundry on Front Street on your broadcast. I will be a professional that you've hired me to be, and I still did that final, and I think I killed that final. That's the one where I came up with the Great One name from when Richard said it. I had all sorts of things about Simple and what it would mean, and him and Nico battling for their first ever major and the back and forth. I think we killed that fucking final. I think it was one of the best desks ever, even though I was so fucking seething with rage the whole day. The whole day. And then when the day ended, are you ready? Once the day had ended, when we were in the green room, the producer of the event came in and just said some sort of like frivolous thing to like Richard or Yanko or something like, hey, what do you think about this thing? And I just said to him, hey mate, come over here. I said, what was going on with that show match thing? So you've just basically legged me on the whole time, made me believe something's going to happen, asked me to do it, requested, and I've granted your request. And at the end, you're going to completely fuck me, and you can't even, like a man, just either tell me, even as a message, by the way, sorry, you're not working the event, they've chosen to go with someone else, I know this is fucked up there. And you can't even now just come up to me and just say, hey, sorry about that, I know it must make you upset. And even when I was saying this to this guy, first of all, he was like counting how many feet he had, looking down the whole time. And then at the end, I just said like, okay. And he was just sort of like, and I was like, no. I need you to now tell me Why can't you just apologise? I said, mate, it's like a magic word. Do you understand that? I said, even if you don't mean it, just say like, I'm sorry. Sorry it went that way. I didn't want it to happen. I said, if you even just said that, even if it was a lie, mate, it would be something. This is nothing. And like literally, it's the one time I've ever had this ever from anyone Romanian. At the very end of it all, he just went like, oh, well, sorry then. And then just sort of like scuttled out the room. Now, you might think, okay, it's a bit weird, isn't it? Well, here's the problem. I did get an apology from Sylvia at PGL. Get ready for the context. Because, by the way, as I say, that insane drama with Bardolph, it's all in the By the Numbers one. You can go and watch that one if you want to find out about that. So, a mixture of the Bardolph drama, this thing with the women not getting hired, and then this show match thing at the end and all the tech problems and no one saying sorry. I had decided that I was going to do that By the Numbers episode. And I tell you what, if they don't ever ask me to work their event again, who gives a fuck? Who the fuck would want to work under these conditions? So I went home and then I actually went on a little trip. Now, this trip is actually mental because believe it or not, I actually happened to be in Russia, something mental, like 1 week before that, like, conflict broke out in Ukraine. And I have to even say, by the way, when you were there, everyone in Russia was even saying like, oh, there won't be any war. That's just like saber rattling on the news or whatever, which is also mad. So while I was there, I actually got a message from Sylvia from PGL that was like, oh, I need to call you. I'm thinking, don't know why, mate. I haven't spoken to you in months. You saw that event, roasted you on By the Numbers. So he then basically called me and apologised. But here's the thing. It was an apology that was like, sorry about all that stuff at the event. No specifics, no details, not even really culpability taken. Sorry about that. And then it immediately was just clear. This is how I knew it wasn't sincere. It just instantly was a springboard into, by the way, I've got the next major, PGL Antwerp, and I want you and Richard to work it again, and we'll all build it around you. Now, here's the problem. On that call, I even told him, here's the problem, mate. Haven't you said publicly, because remember another reason why we didn't have majors in 2020, there was a certain illness, a type of a flu in the world, right? There was a cough going on that was affecting everything in society. Well, here's the problem. I'll just say it outright. I think PGL lost their motherfucking minds over that topic. Absolutely. Like I've heard, are you ready? I've heard one of the reasons they wanted to be remote and not do it in Sweden. It's because remember, Sweden didn't lock down. Sweden was open. In fact, when I went to the PGL Major, I was in fucking nightclubs full of people. It was like mad fucking parties. Sweden was one of the countries that didn't lose their minds. They kept it reasonable. And so PGL, and actually even some of the Romanians, but I can't speak for Romanians in general, a lot of them lost their minds with that shit, by the way. So I can tell you, even though they weren't making demands of us that much at the time when we were in Romania, I've heard that's the reason they didn't want to go to Stockholm. They were on some mad shit that like even going would be like dangerous and people could die. The whole thing was mental. The whole thing was mental. So anyway, the problem is they took that premise and made it even worse for Antwerp. Because I believe they publicly announced something insane that like everyone who worked the event as talent or was a pro player at the event, I think they might even initially implied the crowd might have to do this, they would all have to take a certain quite famous medical treatment. You would have to have something done to your bodily autonomy to even attend the event or work it. So I said to him, is that true though? Is that actually something you're going to maintain? And he said, yes. And I said, well, here's the problem, mate. Even if, I don't know even if you would suggest this, but even if, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you told me, you know, I can take care of that part and I can come however I like. I said, even if you let me off that thing, I wouldn't attend for purely moral and philosophical reasons. I think it's actually not only not your fucking place, you're not a doctor, you're not someone's fucking government or either, not that they have the right either in my opinion, but the idea that a video game tournament organizer is going to demand people do something to their body. I said, that's so inappropriate. I actually think it's morally wrong. And so even if you let me off with it, if I knew you're making players do it or making the crowd do it, I won't attend. I said, I can't. Now at the time, you can't really go, well, you know what, Thorin, shove it up your ass, even though I just said sorry 5 minutes ago. Obviously, you had to make it soft. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Yeah, shame we can't work together on this one. And then that's the last conversation I ever had with that guy. That's it. He wanted me to work his major. And then after that, it was fuck me forevermore. Now, I went to bat for this guy. You'll even see it on the By the Numbers episode. I even tried to sort of explain that I liked that guy. I actually had a soft spot for him, especially what he represented being an OG and making it through doing proper business decisions and grinding out in your little part of the world and then getting control over what you can and then standing publicly and privately against the things you think are wrong and the way the industry is being perverted, not from our OG ethic and ethos of what esports could be for the whole scene and how glorious it could be. I thought this guy got it. So I still went to bat for him after the Stockholm talent hires, after they made us all look like bigots. I still went to bat for him after the initial issues at Stockholm. Even after the Bardolph drama, in theory, if they'd have apologised, it could have all been good. But here's the problem. Yeah, I threw them under the bus a bit on By the Numbers because I actually feel that was actually like one of the most important things we ever did for TOs, me and Richard, was do that particular episode. But I always put it out there that I wanted them to come back to CS and to stay in CS in the years they weren't there. And I wanted them to keep doing majors. And I also wanted it to, so that I also said I was open to work with them at Copenhagen potentially, so we can put it all behind us. Never had a dispute with them, never had a problem with them, never had an argument with them. But they became increasingly more, just ignoring everything else. So as I said before, you know what? You've earned it. You wanted to create a monster? We have done it now. Too late, the Chimera's here, motherfucker. So I'll be the one talent that can speak out against PGL and tell you all this fuck up. And it can show you fresh fuck-ups like the merchandise thing or things behind the scenes you never heard about or expose things that then you try and cover up. And then as long as everyone else is too scared to say things that'll affect their position or they work for you so they don't want to say something, then you'll get away with it with them, but you won't with me, will you? And what's that? Oh, shit, I've got one of the loudest megaphones in the scene. Well, you done fucked up, didn't you? So much for the Game of Thrones. What is it they say? When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Welcome everybody. Blessed are those that visit this channel and enjoy the content here.
Everyone needs a support network, and mine is, of course, my Patreon community, the Scrominati, who in many ways, they're the Sonny to my Cher, saying, I got you, babe. So this video and all the others on my channel were kindly supported by the following names: Ahmed Hadjou, Mac Pugnatio Rajcula, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Thooorin, and you know it. Jerky's Minion, my main man, always going to be referenced, one of the best patrons of all time. Would you like to ask a question in my AMA? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest to say on my channel. Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming Reflections and Talk to Thorin interviews are. Maybe you want to do one of those long discussions where you get to set the topics we talk about. Well, if any of these or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Scluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.